And sometimes he introduces us to a candidate who we all need to get behind. Who do we need to get behind, Howie? She's here.
Hey, Howie.
Hi, how you doing?
Fab.
What?
I'm doing great. It's been an amazing afternoon.
I bet it has, because today was the day that you announced that you're running for Congress.
Yay. Here,
Yep.
applause.
Howie, have you ever run for office before?
I have never run for office before. I've spent 30 years working the policy side of things, and we were, specifically prohibited from doing politics, right? We couldn't be partisan. So it's a whole new world, but it's great. And, thanks in large part to your helping get us the word out. It's been an incredible afternoon. I was just saying we launched about 4 hours ago. We've already got, I think, over 2,600 views on our launch video, and people are starting to take notice and donate. And it's an amazing campaign. We've gotten so much positive feedback, which is easy when you're frankly standing up for things that people care about. So, yeah.
Standing up for that makes a difference, and that especially you're in a very, very blue district with a corporate Democrat. What's the contrast between you and him?
The biggest contrast is that he has doubled down on the Affordable Care Act. He does not support universal guaranteed health care, even though literally more than 10% of the people in this district are uninsured and just thousands more are underinsured. Our district is very much a tale of two cities, where we have a lot of fairly affluent people, but then we have all those people who, provide support and services to those people, the baristas and the people who work in the shops and whatever. And, right here in my district, my next door neighbor is a construction worker. The guy across the street's a pharmacist. And, that's the biggest difference. But, he also doesn't support Paid Family Leave Act, and he doesn't support Children's Early Learning Act. And in our district, the bottom.
This is Virginia 11.
This is Virginia 11th. It's Fairfax and Prince William counties, right outside of DC. And the biggest difference, I'm a single mom. I was raised by a single mom. I really get what it means to be a single mom, a woman, a parent. The pandemic's been really hard on women. In this district,
it's been called a she session, isn't it?
It's a she session. And in this district, the three most disadvantaged groups economically are all single women. Like the most disadvantaged are women 18 to 24, then 25 to 34, and 35 to 44. So you get this huge group of women who are struggling. And frankly, Connolly's, if you're a federal employee or you do IT, he actually, this was something that actually really triggered my desire to just jump in, because no one sane really wants to do this, right? You have to really be compelled to take this step, was when he held up the HEROES Act so that he could add $3 billion in IT funding for DOD. Like DOD computers were more important than feeding families in this nation and in this district. And that just, I don't know, man, that was just it. That was like, you've got to be kidding me, right? So anyway, that's probably more of an answer than you wanted.
No, not at all. I mean, people want to get to know who the candidates are, and by you just talking about why you're running and what the difference is between you and the incumbent, that's how they get to know who you are and are able to make a decision. So, I don't know if it's the most affluent district in America, but it's way right up there as one of the most affluent districts in America. And you're basically running on a pretty working class platform. Is that correct?
I am indeed. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if you're a federal worker or if you're an IT contractor who's making, definitely over $100,000 a year, Connolly's probably fine for you, right? But that is maybe economically a big portion of this district, but from an actual population portion of this district, it's not most of the people, most of the people are working class people, especially in Prince William County. You know, in June, just this last June, there was a woman who primaried Conley. She only raised $28,000. She had almost no name recognition, and she still got nearly 25% of the vote. My son and I were standing in line for the primary. We got one of those little sample ballots, and we always take the green ballot because, you know, we take the progressive ballot around here. I don't know how it is everywhere else. We get the green ballot for the progressive and the green candidates, and you get the pink ballot for the Republicans and the blue ballot for the whatever. Anyway, so we're looking at our green ballot, and we see this woman's name, Zainab and Mohseni, and we're like, who is she? And so my son's like Googling her up, and she's like, oh, Medicare for all. Okay, great. Yes. You know, a Green New Deal. Yes. Okay. We voted for her. She got nearly 25% of the vote with no name recognition. This district is ready for change, right? This district has not been represented. This man's been in office for over a dozen years. And it wasn't until he found out we were running, because I stupidly did the courtesy of like, I called all the state legislators and I'm like, yeah, I just want to give you a heads up, we're running. And I called Conley. I actually spoke to his wife and I was like, yeah, I just want to let you know we're running, just trying to be polite. And he has spent the last 2 weeks like signing everything, you know, like sponsoring every piece of progressive legislation, which he hasn't done for 12 years. He hasn't done that, right? He's just been this staunch corporate Democrat who gets, you know, 90% of his money from corporate PACs and big donors. And he's in the top 10 for getting money from the military industrial complex. And, you know, suddenly he finds out we're running. And just as a personal note, he stole our Twitter handle because I stupidly mentioned it. He locked it up, which was annoying. But he's just, I don't know. And the more I get to know about him and his policies and how he operates, the more just firm I am in the belief that we need change. And you know what? I'm doing it. I'm going to do it. I'm going to try to do it. And it's just, it just needs to happen. So, yeah.
Great. And I'm going to assume that you don't have personal wealth to be able to finance a campaign. Is that correct?
No, I am not intending to personally finance this campaign. That is correct.
Right. So, I know from speaking to you that you're not taking any kind of corporate money.
I'm not going to take any money from corporate PACs. I'm not going to take any in-kind services or goods. This is going to be a by the people, for the people, true grassroots campaign. Absolutely. Because here's the thing, right? Like Conley gets 90% of his money from corporate interests. So who is he going to represent? The people? No, he's going to represent the corporate interests. And that's exactly what he's been doing. And so, you know, if you really want, we need campaign finance reform. I mean, that's just got to be a huge thing, right? We've got to get corporate money out of politics. And everybody says that. And it just doesn't happen because there just hasn't been a preponderance of true progressives that have been elected. But I feel like ever since, you know, the last couple of years and the, you know, knock down the House and the squad and this and that, we're getting there, right? Like we can get a preponderance of true progressives in office. We can finally get true change. We can get campaign finance reform. And then it's, you know, then it's like a, you know, it's just a self-perpetuating kind of motion, right? We can just keep making progress and finally get to a point where we can have government by the people for the people, right? So that's what I want to be a part of. I want to be a part of a movement that can do this.
Right, and I've noticed, like when I looked at your endorsement page on your website this morning, that you had some of our friends that we've had on the show before, some of whom aren't even running as endorsers of yours. And so it makes me think that you are trying to get together with other progressives to be more than just a candidate on your own, but to be someone who is trying to be part of a movement.
That's exactly right. Because, you know, we can't really do it alone. We have to come together and work together. And we've reached out to, you know, on the website, you saw Adam Christensen, Jason Cawley, and O'Mara, who were all amazing. We've also reached out to Eva Putsova and Christina Olivo and a bunch of others, right? A lot of people who are really trying to make change happen. We've reached out to ones who are, you know, also like Nina Turner, who is one of my personal heroes, and Cori Bush. They're just so busy that they haven't reached back to us yet. But, you know, maybe now that we've officially announced and I'm an actual candidate, we can get those relationships going too, because we can work, if we can work collaboratively, you know, it's the sum of the parts being more than the individual pieces, right? So if we can work collaboratively, maybe we can really try and get this thing going.
Right. So I met you through your son, who's a college student, and he's very progressive. Are you influencing him, or is he influencing you? I imagine you're both influencing each other. But was he eager to get you to run for this seat?
You know, that is just an excellent question. The reality is that I was in large part kind of blind to a lot of what had been going on. And he really opened my eyes through, you know, when Bernie was running for president. There was this one incident where I was like, oh my God, I finally get it, right? So Bernie Sanders had this huge rally at the St. James Center, which is like less than a mile from where we live. It's literally right down the road. Traffic was snarled. There was people all over the place. You know, people were posting all over the place. Oh my God, you know, it's Bernie. We both had friends there and they had, you know, taking video, and there's like 8,000 or 10,000 people there. It was crazy. And I'm like, oh my God, I can't wait to see this on the news tonight, right? Yeah, nothing on the news tonight. They showed Biden in South Carolina in a volleyball gymnasium with 200 people. I'm like, oh, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? And so then I really started to become involved in politics and what was going on. And we were sitting watching Knock Down the House, and Kyle looks at me and was like, you know, you could run for Congress.
That's the documentary about AOC.
Yes. So we had just had this thing. So I've spent 30 years working natural resource conservation, right? Working as an environmental professional. And in the matter of 4 years, Trump like undid my life's work, right? Undercut, you know, Endangered Species Act, weakened the National Environmental Policy Act. One of the first things that when he first came in office, I actually had to go to Interior to defend the Defense Department's like ability to still protect migratory birds, because he had some lawyer who came out and said, no, the Migratory Bird Treaty Act take provision, which is take is when you just like harass or bother a migratory bird, really doesn't apply, because, you know, if you drove down the road and you hit it, you'd go to jail, you'd hit a bird. It was like, are you kidding me? So anyway, it was all a process, and he really influenced me more than anything. And I became aware, and I started doing a lot of reading, especially in May, when we literally were having a person of color killed every week, right? You know, watching the lynching of Ahmaud Arbery on television one morning, I'm sitting there drinking my tea, and I'm like, this man was just literally lynched. And it was just this whole progress through the summer and into the fall. And so he's been the one who kickstarted this. And now we work together very collaborative. He's my interim campaign manager until he goes back to school. He is a musical theater major and is in a show. So his time's going to become a little bit less available to me. But it's definitely him who started, but me who's picking up the baton and moving on.
Allie Dalsimer, alleyforcongress.com.
Yes.
Go to alleyforcongress.com. That's ALLY for Congress.com. She's endorsed by Howie Klein. That means the Blue America PAC has endorsed you.
That is awesome. Yep.
That's all anybody needs to know. If you're listening to this show, all you need to know is Howie Klein supports Allie Dalsimer for Virginia's 11th Congressional District. Go to alleyforcongress.com. Donate money if you're an American citizen, or volunteer. Make calls for Allie. And who are you running against?
I am running against Jerry Connolly. He's a 7th term incumbent corporate Dem who does not support universal health care, does not support paid family leave act, does not support a lot of, frankly, policies that this country and the people in it need. Yeah, and thank you for how
Let me ask you a question that in the news today. You know, there's some talk from the establishment Democrats. You know, he's in that wing. I don't know where he stands on it, but he's one of them. But there's talk that they're willing to compromise on, for example, minimum wage and maybe keep that out of the reconciliation bill. Which means it would be killed. They're willing to compromise on having a lower threshold for when people get the checks. So instead of getting a check if you make $75,000 or less, the Biden administration, as well as conservative Democrats in the Senate and the House, are saying
50.
I think it's 60,000 or 50,000. I think 60 is the number they're talking about now. So, I mean, in a district like yours, that's going to be that's going to be a real problem, because you do have a pretty middle class district, and a lot of those people aren't going to be happy about that, because they're hurting as well. They're not in dire poverty, but they are hurting from this pandemic, and they did get checks the first time. I mean, if it's supposed to be a $2,000 check, because they already got 600 and now they're going to get 1,400. All of a sudden, you're changing the rules, and the ones who got it under Trump aren't going to get it under Biden. I mean, does this make any sense?
No, it really doesn't, especially in an area like the DC metro area. I'm sure it's the same in New York and LA and big cities. You know, maybe the difference between $50,000 and $75,000 a year for a working family is meaningful in middle America, in a small town where housing is, say, affordable. But the lack of affordable housing in this area, when the real estate market is booming and rich people are getting richer and the stock market is going crazy, you know, you can't live on that to pay rent and raise a family. 50 or 75 in this area is meaningless, right? That difference is, I mean, it's not meaningless. I shouldn't say that, but it's not enough to make a difference for not getting support. People are hurting. A lot of people are out of work, and a lot of people who anticipated and expected those funds, you know, are going to really struggle not to have them. And the reality is, you know, that anybody who really understands the basics of economics, everybody understands that if you give money to a person who is not wealthy, they're going to spend it in their district. They're going to spend it on food. They're going to spend it on clothing. They're going to spend it on shelter. They're going to spend it in their district. They're going to pump up their local economies. If you give money to super wealthy people, they buy yachts or homes in Italy or whatever the luxury good is for Italian marble for their fourth home. It doesn't help stimulate the local economy.
But aren't they afraid? The more you talk to these people, they say if the minimum wage is raised to $15 and there's money circulating, then how am I going to hire people?
Yeah.
It's going to be too expensive to hire people. And if they have, you know, money, stimulus checks coming, there's now talk, Richard Neal, Howie's favorite congressman from Massachusetts, head of House Ways and Means, is talking about an earned income tax credit of $300 per kid each month. Well, if single moms get those checks sent to them, they're not going to want to work. Where am I going to get my labor force from? I mean, they believe that. That's what people believe.
And they've been fed so much propaganda and misinformation that it's hard to get people to understand the truth. And, you know, truth in media is something that is a tricky issue because of First Amendment rights, right? But the reality is that there's a lot of untruth in media, and especially in some of the propaganda that has been coming out. And, you know, to tell someone that if you pay somebody a living wage, your business is going to go under is just wrong, right? Like Henry Ford proved that, right? He doubled the wage for workers. And what happened? Everybody bought a Ford, right? Everybody came up, lifted all the boats, right? And so it's a specious argument, and it doesn't hold water if you know anything about economics. So, but what can you do? Because when people are frankly really brainwashed by misinformation, they don't want to believe they've been duped, right? Nobody wants to believe they've been duped. And so it's very hard to get people to come around. But all you can do is just try to demonstrate things. It's like people who say if we have universal health care, it's going to bankrupt our healthcare system, when the reality is 33 cents of every dollar is going to a middleman, right? It's going to the healthcare industry. It's making hundreds of billions of dollars. And the reality is, like that GAO report showed, we're going to save something like $4 trillion over, I can't remember the span, 20 years or something. So
Right.
you can try to give facts and talk to them reasonably, but there are people who are just not going to support it because they are listening to weak QAnon crazy people.
And you couldn't even get that conversation going during the debates. I could not see Bernie on national television because they put 20 candidates up on the stage with him.
Yeah.
He never got an opportunity to make the case for Medicare for all. Howie, why do corporations not support Medicare for all? It's a form of welfare for them. Wouldn't the corporations rather have the government pay the benefits than?
It doesn't make sense to me either. They should, but they just see it as something that's going to raise their taxes. I mean, someone has to pay these costs, and they feel that the costs are out of, they're out of control, and it's not even a matter of Medicare for all. They would like to see the end of Medicare, period. And big business has not in the past supported it. The people who own big business feel that they have to pay for it, and they have to pay for poor people, and they don't want to.
I was reading about over the weekend. I was reading about the man in the house rule, which was ultimately ruled unconstitutional. But there was a time, especially in the South, where the state would deny welfare benefits to single moms who had not a husband, but if they were having sex or a boyfriend in the apartment or the house visiting, they were denied their welfare benefits. And the man of the house rule was enforced in the South during harvest season. That's when the state welfare agents would start denying welfare to these single moms to get them to go out into the field and pick the crops. And as you read that, you have to be reminded that people are that evil. That people who
the very first inkling of a minimum wage act, minimum wage law, was in the 1300s and in England, and it wasn't a minimum wage law; it was a maximum wage law. They literally put a maximum on the amount of money that a landowner could pay people to work his land. Because there had just been the Black Plague, people were dead, and they didn't have the labor force that they needed. So prices went up. But when prices went up, no one's talking about the free market anymore. They just said if you would be fined if you paid labor. Eventually, that bill started to include minimum wage as well. It was another 300 years before it included minimum wage, and then eventually they just abolished that anyway. So yes, the rich have been very, very opposed to this always, and it's just a matter of selfishness is really what it is. The rich don't pay their fair share of taxes. It's that simple.
You grew up in. I'm sorry.
I was going to say that's what led to the French Revolution, though. Just because people have been stupid throughout history doesn't mean we shouldn't keep trying.
Speaking of the French, you grew up in Mali? Did I see Allie? Did you grow up in Mali, in Africa?
So my dad was stationed overseas. I went to Africa when I was 6 weeks old. And we were never in Mali. We were in Senegal, we were in Somalia, and we were in the Congo. And then I went back over when I was in my teens, when he got stationed there again. And we spent the summers. So we spent 2.5 months each year there for the times that he was there. And we were in Chad, and we were in Upper Volta when it became Burkina Faso. That was crazy. And we were in Zaire, which had been Congo and then went back to being Congo, but was at that time Zaire, and Mobutu was in power, which is why I've seen the effects of propaganda before, because lots of propaganda about how fabulous, Père Mobutu was, despite the fact that ministry officials who disagreed with him would disappear regularly.
What
But
do
yeah,
we do about it? What do we do about propaganda in this country?
I think if I had the answer to that, I'd
But it's all we
be
get.
it is all we get. But,
MSNBC, it's
we need independent news programs, right? Like this. So we need more independent news programs. I mean, it used to be, I saw a statistic and I'm probably going to misquote it, but I think it was 10 years ago, the major news outlets were owned. There was something like 21 companies. And now all the major news outlets are owned by 5 corporations. And there's no diversity. And we need a lot more public funding for independent outlets like Pacifica, and like, I'm a big fan of PBS. I watch Democracy Now! And the PBS NewsHour and that kind of thing. And those are the only places where you can get unbiased news, where you can get real information, because everything else is all about, I flipped on we were watching the Super Bowl last night. And so I flipped the television on this morning. Instead of being on PBS, it was on CBS. And all they're doing is talking about Paramount and Paramount this and Paramount that. And I was like, oh my God, they must own CBS, right? Because that's not news.
That's Viacom, yeah.
So it's not news, right? It's just talking about what an amazing job Paramount does with this, and there's this coming out and whatever. And I'm like, this is propaganda. This is not actual news. This is just advertising. Which is
CBS. You were watching CBS.
Well, that's what was on because we'd watched the Super Bowl last night.
Right. CBS owns, it's part of the Viacom family.
Exactly. Yep.
So no mention of the Bessemer workers in Alabama, the Amazon.
There wasn't even mention of what's going on in Myanmar or the glacier collapsing in India. There was no news. It was like, obviously there's no world outside of US entertainment.
And the only way you can get away with that is claiming American exceptionalism. That's what they tell us. We're the greatest country. The only thing that matters is America.
Yeah.
Watch this piece of crap from Paramount.
Yeah. If I had a magic wand, I think I would tell every American to travel with a backpack when they're young and see the world. Because only then can you really understand where America fits in the bigger picture and what true poverty is, what true heroism is, and what true beauty in the world is.
Well, I think Americans are learning what true poverty is. And I think a lot of them are going to have backpacks pretty soon. And that's all.
It's funny, Al, you and I have never talked about any of this, and I don't know if you know this or not, but that's what you just talked about is exactly what I did. I left the country for 7 years and traveled around the world, basically with no money at all. And sometimes I was completely dependent on the generosity of strangers, as they say. Other times I made a good deal on some hash and was living like a king, relatively.
I did not know that. That is very cool.
Now,
to tell you about it.
Can we let them in on a little secret, Allie, about this interview? Because
Sure.
you did great. You are fantastic.
Well, thank you for that. My very first interview. Yeah. So
This was your
right. When Allie and I first talked about her coming on today, she was nervous. She said she's never done it before, and I said, "Well, this is a good place to get your feet wet."
Well, you're fantastic, and I'm glad this will be a people will play this in 20 years. I can see Frontline.
Awesome. That's
President
great.
Dalsimer made her first
President
appearance
Dalsimer.
on
Yes.
the David Feldman show.
Very hospitable and made it very easy.
Oh, no.
I appreciate it a lot. And Howie, thank you for setting it up.
You make it really easy for me to tell my audience to go to Ally for Congress, ALLY. She is your ally. That didn't work. Okay.
No,
it didn't. This will be the last time she does my show because of that. Ally Dalsimer for Congress. She's running for Virginia's 11th congressional district. She's endorsed by Howie Klein. That's all you need to know. Go to allyforcongress.com. Give her money or volunteer. Let's send her to Washington, D.C. Thank you, Ally. And thank you, Howie.
and
Thank you
David.
both. Thank you so much.
Howie Klein is the founder and treasurer of the Blue America PAC. They raise money for progressive candidates around America, and read them every day at Down with Tyranny. I haven't been able to talk to you about all that's going on, but next week we'll talk. Thank you, Howie.
Okay, next week.
Thank you, Howie. Coming up, Senator Susan Collins.